Hi, welcome to the session, Securing the Future, Housing Resilience Through Financial Inclusion. It's part of the AXIOM Financial Inclusion Week 2025 with the theme of building resilience and well-being during rising community uncertainties. My name is Zhang Shuang. I'm the Assistant Vice President of CITI's International Community Relations team, and we'll be hosting today's session on housing resilience and financial inclusion. In 2024, the CITI Foundation awarded 50 organizations around the world 500,000 each in catalytic funding as part of the 2024 Global Innovation Challenge, which aims to support solutions that address homelessness. Today, I'm honored to have 3 of these 50 organizations from different parts of the world with me to talk about innovative financing solutions for unbanked and underbanked communities. We will explore how these solutions strengthen their housing security and economic empowerment, especially during uncertain times. So today we have Zachary Dinan, Program Manager of the Nubian Vault Association. The Nubian Vault is implementing a revolving fund to grant loans for the construction of Nubian Vault houses for vulnerable populations who are excluded from traditional banking and microfinance institutions. And we have Ryan Ifiola, Vice President of International Programs of the Fuller Center for Housing. The Fuller Center, with Ante Ayudanto Ante, is working with families in El Salvador to build their own homes and to support community development through no-interest loans and wraparound services. And Ella Willen, Program Lead of the Center for Homelessness Impact. The center is pioneering and studying the effects of one-time unconditional cash transfers to individuals experiencing homelessness in the UK to build sustainable pathways to economic security. So thank you all for joining. I want to start with the Nubian Vault Association and the Fuller Center. So Zachary and Ryan, I think your programs have a lot in common. You both help disadvantaged populations build their own homes by engaging them in the decision-making and construction processes. And you provide financial solutions to help them fund their home building. Can we start with the construction part of the program? Zachary, could you talk about how the program participants are and who the participants are and what challenges they face? Also, please share with us why it is important for them to be part of the construction and how does the Nubian Vault equip them with the necessary construction techniques? Over to you.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Chuang. Our program mainly targets rural populations in West African countries. Who face a range of challenges that limit their access to decent and adapted dwellings. These challenges include, first, climate change and its consequences, extreme heat, violent storms, deforestation. Second challenge, population growth. And finally, the structural mismatch between the socio-economic characteristic of rural people living on irregular and informal incomes, and the requirements of formal financial institution, which excludes them from traditional construction loans. As a result of climate change and population growth, the wood used for roofing traditional buildings has become scarce and has been largely replaced by sheet metal, an imported material with a high carbon footprint that offers poor performance in terms of comfort and durability and increases building costs. So since, sorry, I will share some pictures. Since 2000, our association has been promoting the endogenous dissemination of a low carbon building technique that is very affordable and allows buildings to be constructed using only raw earth bricks, including for vaulted roofs. We train masons and young rural people in this technique in several West African countries, more than 4,000 of them to date. This type of architecture is part of self-built practices, and the participation of the beneficiaries and their community with mutual aid is essential. It's really essential in the form of unskilled labor and the mobilization of local materials, earth, water, and stones. This involvement of the population limits cash expenditure for vulnerable families. Nevertheless, paying masons trained in Nubian vault constructions remains a significant expense for some families. That's why we design and implement various financial incentive mechanism based on the financial valuation of carbon savings from Nubian vault constructions and community saving, such as the revolving fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary. I think when it comes to carbon footprint, I seldom thought of the roofing materials that could have an environmental impact. And also the carbon credit that you bring up is very interesting as well. Now I want to turn to Ryan. So Ryan, the Fuller Center works with families that live in makeshift informal housing in El Salvador. Could you give us a picture of who they are and what their living environment looks like?
Of course, I'd be happy to do that. And let me actually go ahead and share some pictures, literally, just to kind of give an image of the types of families that we are helping and where they are coming from. So they're living in very rudimentary spaces, typically, that are incredibly uncomfortable, unhealthy. They don't provide the dignity that these families deserve that are living in them. But despite that situation, we're building with beautiful families of multi-generations. There's kids, there's parents, there's grandparents very often living together. The adults are typically working, often simple jobs like agriculture or selling, sometimes even more of what we might think of as a middle-class job, like a teacher or a police officer, but they just can't afford anything better, and they don't qualify for loans, or they can't afford high interest rates that are offered by other microfinance institutions. And for today, since we're partnering with Citi in El Salvador, I'm just going to kind of focus on in El Salvador with some of our pictures that I'll be sharing. But what we build is what we call simple, decent homes. We want them to be healthy and whole. So to be a whole home, that means something specific for us. It means they need to be permanent constructions. They need to have a dry roof, solid walls. Maybe we take that for granted, but as you could see where they're coming from, that is not often the case. Hygienic floor that's at least concrete instead of dirt. The home should provide access to clean water and a place to use the restroom. You don't live in a home too long before you realize you need a place to use the restroom. And so you need to be able to do that in a way that is conducive to good family life and also good for the environment and for the drinking water and your neighbors. A private place to shower or bathe, so important for families, especially for women. Space for cooking without smoke, filling the inside of the homes, protection from mosquitoes, and then access to some form of electricity. It's amazing how cell phones have gone around the world, but also even just a light bulb can make a big difference for kids being able to study at night. The result is a home that we feel really, truly restores and gives the families the dignity that they deserve.
Thank you. That's very helpful for us to understand the challenges they face. And you did bring up a very important point. These things, we all take it for granted, but sometimes in the remote areas or in the areas that you serve, these are not the privilege that can be enjoyed by all the people. And I think these pictures that you show illustrates the build their own homes approach. And I know it's fundamental to the Fuller Center's model. So how does this active participation cultivate a profound sense of ownership in your program?
Yeah, we're very focused on home ownership at Fuller Center for Housing. So from beginning to end, it's important that the homes will truly be theirs, not just ours. We're doing it together, not for them. So families participate in the design of the community, and then they participate physically in building their home. They're going to own it, so it's important that they understand what it takes to build something like this and how to keep it up over time. Because so often we look at just the initial moment, but what's important to us is also how is this sustaining over the long haul. And for that, families need to kind of understand a little bit more about how to take care of their home. And just as importantly to us, they're also helping their neighbors build their homes because when we're building communities, it's that friendship and connection that holds the community together, makes it truly healthy and whole for all of them. So we also get them involved with building their neighbors' homes. And in addition, one other piece that we like to bring is to involve volunteers, whether that's volunteers from within the same country or international volunteers. And the result from that is a home and a program that's not just kind of based around the economics of affordability, but there is a sense of love and concern for one another that comes across that kind of cross-cultural outreach, and it just bridges a lot of those differences that we have or that we imagine.
Yeah, what I heard is a multi-phased relationship that you forged through the building of their homes. So we've learned about the construction part of both programs. Now I want to move on to the financial aspect. So I want to move back to Zachary. The revolving fund set up in Ivory Coast by the specialized NGO Urba Monde and Urba Sen in partnership with the Nubian Vault provides essential loans for the construction of affordable, sustainable housing. So could you explain how this innovative financial model specifically strengthens the resilience of vulnerable populations in terms of housing, and particularly in the face of challenges such as displacement and climate change?
Yes, sure. So let me share maybe, yeah. So in Ivory Coast, as you said, with support from the City Foundation and in partnership with Urba Monde and Urba Sen, we are working to adapt revolving funds to offer rural households microloans to invest in sustainable and affordable housing solutions, such as Nubian Vaults. So, how does it work? Residents come together at the local level and at the national level as part of a federation. And they pool their savings in contributions to create a fund that is used to grant very favorable loans to its members so that they can build or renovate their homes. So this mechanism strengthens resilience and on several levels. Economically, first, it reduces the barrier to accessing suitable housing by spreading the cost of building over affordable repayments, while ensuring that these payments feed back into the fund to support other families. For instance, the fund managed by our partners in Senegal, which amounts to approximately $100,000, has lent $230,000 over 10 years, representing a multiplier effect of 2.3. So socially, it promotes solidarity, mutual aid, and cohesion within the community. This model enables many vulnerable families to benefit from decent and sustainable housing. For instance, the revolving fund set up in Senegal was intended to help vulnerable families affected by flooding in Dakar. In Ivory Coast, we adapt the monitoring rules of the rotative fund and microloan distribution to promote the inclusion of asylum seekers and the families who host them, coming from Burkina Faso and Mali. So how? We combine microcredit with building site training, organized as part of inclusive training programs that promote the economic integration of target population and social cohesion. Asylum seekers and their families can be involved in the training program, and they participate to the building site, they are trained, and they can receive a loans to build. And we contribute to the pooling of investments and expenses. For example, equipment, transport, we can help to buy some equipment, and the equipment are shared between the member of the groups in order to reduce the cost of construction projects for these families. These mechanisms are combined with technical assistance, awareness campaigns, and training programs so that families can not only access financing, but also acquire the skills and confidence necessary to invest in safe and sustainable housing. This integrated approach ensures that financial inclusion goes beyond access to credit. It becomes a means of empowerment, security, and long-term resilience for families, for all families, including people coming from other countries and living terrorism or climate change. Thank you.
This is such an innovative approach that you sort of combine capacity building, emergency relief, and also access to affordable financing with the revolving fund. So thank you so much for giving us such a detailed information about that. And Ryan, you also have a financial solution in your program. Could you talk about how the no-profit, no-interest loan structure cultivates long-term housing resilience for families?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that idea of a no profit, no interest loan is just such a beautiful idea. I don't know why more organizations don't do it. We love innovation, but interestingly, that concept is really an ancient idea. It's held in common by traditional Judaism, Christianity, and Islam alike. This concept that when you lend to the poor, you don't charge them interest. That's something that has been very widely accepted, and it's something that people can understand. Families can grasp it. It seems fair. They love that idea, and it means that families they're not just receiving gifts then, but they're actually paying it back, paying it forward to help more families. And so as they become owners of their own homes by making their payments, they're also becoming givers and donors themselves. And I think that is really a wonderful thing. So as they have a place to call home, they have full security of tenure where they're at. No one can kick them out as long as they make their affordable payment. And they're not losing everything every time there's a monsoon or a mudslide. So the entire system kind of becomes more resilient because the funds for the next families aren't relying solely upon outside capital, but the community itself is actually providing those resources. So as they make their payments, the homes for their neighbors can be built. So then best of all to us, I think the home becomes this launching point for the family's greater success in life. So they improve health and educational outcomes for kids. And then for the families, it serves as this base of operations for the parents who can launch new businesses and kind of put their ideas and their own minds into action right from their front door. So I think it's an incredible idea. It's powerful, simple, and does create a lot of long-term resilience for family.
Yeah, it sounds really beautiful. I think providing financial solutions is one thing, but walking with the families through this journey is another. So I feel it is truly heartening to hear that you actually celebrate and reward all those who have made their payments. I think they definitely deserve to be celebrated because all repayments will be used to build more homes and communities. So these partner families are not only receivers, but also givers. I think that really touched my heart. It's a great cycle to make changes happen. So now I want to turn to Ella from the Center for Homelessness Impact. Your program about the impact of unconditional cash transfers is very different from other speakers, but I think it's also very important as the unconditional cash transfers serve as a critical pathway to integrating vulnerable populations into the formal financial system and promote long-term stability and economic empowerment. So you're testing the impact of this one-time unconditional cash transfers on individuals with lived experience of homelessness. Could you share with us the core hypothesis behind this strategy?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So Ryan actually used the word dignity earlier, and with funding from the City Foundation, this project and our wider work, but this project particularly, we are striving to give people the dignity of choice. And the Centre for Homelessness Impact exists to improve the lives of people who are currently experiencing homelessness. Through better use of data and evidence. And the Personal Grants Project is based on a kind of understanding that additional financial assistance programs have been receiving increased attention over the last decade, particularly in low and middle income countries. They've been used to alleviate poverty, with studies demonstrating that such interventions can lead to improved outcomes. And we're really pleased to be able to share this kind of groundbreaking project that's testing direct cash transfers, that one-off cash transfer, as an intervention to support people out of homelessness. And in this project, we're working in Belfast and in London, and it involves an independent evaluation to understand whether giving money directly to individuals with experience of street homelessness will enable them to move on from homelessness permanently. So not through a charity or a local authority, but the money goes directly to their own bank account. So part of the work that we're doing with our delivery partners is supporting them to support the people experiencing homelessness to open a bank account. And we're doing this because giving money to people experiencing hardship, a direct cash transfer, has a strong evidence base from evaluations across the world as an effective route out of poverty and homelessness. And not many programs have tested the impact of giving this personal grant or this cash transfer to people who are currently experiencing homelessness. And we're really on a journey in the sector, in the homelessness and housing sector, to create a more robust evidence base using randomized controlled trials, so that independent evaluation that I mentioned with colleagues from King's College London, to understand the impact of this direct cash transfer on a range of outcomes, so including things like housing and financial stability, as well as things like mental health and social connections. And we're looking for this project to recruit around 250 people, and 125 of those people will get the direct cash transfer, and 125 people won't, but they will continue to receive business as usual support, so from the partner organizations that they're already being supported by. And we're really trying to understand to test the additionality of this intervention rather than the intervention on its own. How does it support people, and what does the long-term impact even look like?
Interesting, really interesting. Your project has been live since July this year, right? So what's been the reaction of organizations and people you have been working with?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think particularly where we are kind of entering into a sort of new type of work in the sector with the randomized control trial. It is a bit of a journey, as I said earlier, and we're kind of coming across things around the kind of ethics of RCTs and things like that, which we're having ongoing conversations with partners around, and really trying to kind of bring to light the importance of creating this robust evidence base to make sure that we're using the best practice to support people. But largely, on the whole, our partners are so enthusiastic and so committed to this work, and it's really, really a privilege to be working with them. We're starting to hear some really positive stories from participants as we kind of get through our recruitment period, which ends in November. So we're still recruiting for participants at the moment, but some of the stories coming through around people buying new clothes for things like job interviews, paying for things like vocational training, as well as holidays. I think it's easy to forget sometimes, or to lose sight of the fact that joy is so important and can offer so much to people who are experiencing hardship or going through a hard time or a challenge. So it's really great to hear some of those stories. And it's been really wonderful to kind of start hearing those as they come through. As you say, we've been live since July, and we're just starting to make some payments now, which is really exciting.
Wow. Yeah, I want to dig deeper. So how is the Center for Homelessness Impact working with local authorities, funders, and other partners to test this hypothesis and adapt and scale promising ideas like cash transfers, I'm sure you must encounter some skepticism in this research, right? And what might this tell us about creating a more resilient, inclusive support system overall?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you mentioned that skepticism, and I alluded to it earlier. I think it's, as I said, we're still on this kind of journey with the sector to really encourage use of good and robust evidence with RCTs and other kinds of evaluation, and kind of how we disseminate that information and how we bring people along on with us on that journey. So we're alongside this personal grants program with funding from the City Foundation, we're also running what we're calling our Test and Learn program with funding from the UK government. Doing similar work in terms of looking at different interventions that might support people out of homelessness alongside independent evaluations. And I think that's one of the ways that we're really working to grow the evidence base quite dramatically in the last year or so, which has been really exciting. Alongside an evaluation, which we're calling the systems-wide evaluation, which is understanding the different levers that exist in the homelessness sector in the UK or in England specifically, and where we might be able to kind of push or pull differently to make a more effective and more kind of equitable system. And ultimately, I think what my panel colleagues are alluding to, and we've talked about earlier, is like relationships are so important in this work, and that's what we're really trying to do as we go through, building a new evidence base and creating that systems change. We're building relationships with, colleagues internationally, with colleagues in government, and with people like yourself at City, and we're really kind of looking for different ways to make an impact, including things like conferences and stuff like that. I've had colleagues speaking at a conference in Utrecht last week, and we also had our the Centre for Homelessness Impact does an annual conference, which we had last week, which was a huge success. And it was so great to have so many people in person in the room together. And there was a real buzz about the kind of change that we're all trying to make.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm excited about the results of this study. So before we close the session, can I ask each of you to share what success specifically looks like for your program? How do you envision the long-term impact of these amazing initiatives? Maybe we'll start with Zachary again, and then Brian and Ella.
Yes, sure. Although the Bienenwald technique is deeply consistent with traditional construction practices in West Africa, it remains an innovation standardized by AVN based on an ancient technique originating in Nubia. In order for it to spread on a large scale and be accessible to as many people as possible, the building sector must adopt this low carbon construction technique. So the success of our program therefore depends on the appropriation of the technique and its dissemination methodology by all the stakeholders, masons, trainers, other actors in the construction sector, as technicians, architects, or local ones for sure, and technical, institutional, and financial partners. And of course, the local populations in all their diversity, including vulnerable and rural people. And for us, it is the market, that means the simultaneous growth of different demands and production capacity in the formal and informal markets. That is, so this market is the indicator of the success of our program.
Thank you, Zachary. Ryan, over to you.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I do have a few more pictures that I wanted to share. So this will give me the perfect chance to do that, if that's all right.
That's
Put a
great.
few more up here. So yeah, you asked what success looks like. The Fuller Center has been able to do about a dozen communities like this, along with our partners now in El Salvador. And so I've had the privilege of being able to visit so many families and communities. And what you see are families who are proud of their homes, grateful. They show us too, though, how the space is letting them do things that they could never do before, like begin making and selling baked goods or wares or just other things out of their front door. And I think more than that, it's how it progresses over time. So when you come back 10 or 20 years later, the homes, how do they look? How does the community look? How does it feel? Are they still well kept? Are they still well utilized, loved, and cherished? Are they being used by the appropriate families? And what's the situation with their kids now? Have they improved their lot in life? And so we do surveys and we have data, and that's important. But you also learn a lot just by visiting in a way that you can't learn just from numbers. And when families are making their payments, I think that's a sense of success for us. When they complete their payments, that's a moment to celebrate because they've now allowed another family to be able to have a home, and they've passed that gift along. So I think success for us looks like families that are thriving in the short and long term. And this is an example here in this picture. You see further community improvements. The roads were able to be paved. So sometimes we use some portion of the repayments to do community improvements, playgrounds, and things like that. This family over here is selling something. They're using their home to sell. Looks like some kind of internet connection. But you just see that kind of activity throughout, and families doing well and having a little glow in their face. So we feel great about that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That definitely looks like success. They are just like the stock photos that we will use to illustrate how happy the families are. So thank you for sharing. Ella, last but not least, I would like to turn over to you.
Thank you. I think there's sort of short and long-term outcomes or impacts that we're kind of thinking about now. Ultimately what we want sort of in the next year or so is to get a kind of positive impact from our randomized control trial, and not that I would want to prejudice our results in any way. That's going to be our first port of call for what kind of impact we think this program can have. Is what the results tell us. But we're also going to look at those qualitative results. So the stories that Ryan just shared, similarly, how do people feel with this kind of intervention? What does it mean to them, and how does it impact their life in a kind of short and medium term? We're measuring impact at 3 months and 12 months. So it'll be really great to kind of hear at those time points where people are at and what the kind of cash transfer or not has meant, and the differences in those two groups. And ultimately, the centre wants to kind of end it with evidence, right? We're aiming to end homelessness using the best evidence we have available to us. So we're creating the evidence, and we're advocating for it and advocating for better use of the evidence. We're looking at things like scaling up these kind of interventions, and even policy change if we're dreaming big.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm super glad to hear that we are all employing evidence-based approach to measure long-term impact. I think that speaks a lot about our program approach, and also the goal that we want to advance. So thank you very much, Zachary, Ryan, and Ella. I learned so much about your programs and innovations today, and I'm really looking forward to the outcomes of what we are able to achieve together to address homelessness in different parts of the world. So thank you again for your time and insightful sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.